30 old Betty Crocker Christmas candies nobody makes anymore. Remember when December meant your mother disappeared into the kitchen for 3 straight days? When you'd come home from school and the whole house smelled like butter and brown sugar? When the dining room table was covered with wax paper and cooling racks, and you weren't allowed to touch anything until it set? Betty Crocker's 1950s Christmas cookbook sat on every counter in America, spine cracked, pages stained with sugar syrup and butter. Inside were 30 Christmas candies that defined an American holiday. Bourbon balls, Divinity, Penuche. Your grandmother made them for pennies. She'd never dream of serving store-bought candy to guests. These weren't fancy European confections. They were American candies, made with ingredients from the A&P, techniques passed from mother to daughter.
These candies look like they were made by angels.
Today you won't find a single one at holiday parties. They vanished the day we decided homemade looked cheap and C's candies looked classy. We're bringing them back. Here's number 30. Number 30, Butterscotch Drops. Hard candy made from cooked sugar and butter, dropped onto wax paper and left to harden. In 1950, Butterscotch Drops cost about 25 cents per batch. That's roughly $3 today. Sugar was 10 cents per pound. You needed 2 cups. Corn syrup was 25 cents per bottle and lasted for months. You used 2 tablespoons. Butter was the expensive ingredient at 70 cents per pound, but you only needed a 1/4 cup. Water was free. Vanilla extract cost 15 cents per small bottle. Betty Crocker's recipe required a candy thermometer and steady nerve. Combine sugar, corn syrup, butter, and water in a heavy saucepan. The corn syrup prevented crystallization that would make the candy grainy instead of glassy. Stir over medium heat until the sugar dissolved completely. Stop stirring once it dissolved. Attach a candy thermometer. Cook without stirring to hard crack stage, 300 degrees. The mixture would bubble vigorously and smell increasingly caramelized. When it hit 300 exactly, remove from heat immediately. Stir in vanilla extract. Work quickly because the mixture would start to harden within seconds. Drop by teaspoonfuls onto buttered wax paper. The drops would spread slightly and harden as they cooled into golden, translucent discs. Each piece was pure butterscotch flavor, tasting like concentrated butter and caramelized sugar. These disappeared when Werther's Originals replaced homemade drops. You can make them for about $4 today. Number 29. Coconut Haystacks. Shredded coconut bound with corn syrup and shaped into pointed mounds. No cooking required, which made these perfect for hot summer days, or when you were too busy for complicated candies. In 1955, coconut haystacks cost about 40 cents per batch. That's roughly $5 today. Shredded coconut was 30 cents per package. Corn syrup was 25 cents per bottle. Vanilla extract was 15 cents. Mix shredded coconut with light corn syrup and vanilla until the mixture held together when squeezed. The corn syrup acted as both sweetener and binder. Drop by rounded spoonfuls onto wax paper. Use your fingers to shape each mound into a pointed haystack, like the haystacks you'd see in farm fields during harvest season. Let them sit at room temperature for several hours until they firmed up. The candy was chewy, sweet, and purely coconut flavored, with no competing ingredients to distract from that tropical taste. Your mother made these when she was too busy for complicated candies that required thermometers and precise temperatures. Every church bazaar had them because they were foolproof. These vanished when coconut became controversial in the 1980s, associated with saturated fat and old-fashioned cooking. You can make them for about $5 today. Number 28. Cherry Cordials. Whole maraschino cherries, surrounded by fondant and dipped in chocolate. The magic was that the fondant would liquefy after a few days of aging. In 1950, cherry cordials cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. The secret ingredient was invertase, an enzyme that breaks down sugar into liquid form. Make fondant by mixing powdered sugar, butter, and a tiny amount of invertase. Wrap each cherry completely in fondant, making sure there were no gaps. Chill until firm. Dip each fondant-wrapped cherry in melted chocolate, covering it completely. Let them age for 3 to 5 days at room temperature. During aging, the invertase worked its magic. turning the solid fondant into sweet syrup. When you bit into the finished cordial, liquid would flow out, surrounding the cherry with sweetness. The chocolate shell provided structure and richness. Your grandmother made these because they looked and tasted like the expensive cordials sold in candy shops, but cost a fraction of the price. These disappeared when Queen Anne. Cordial cherries became available in every grocery store. You can make them for about $12 today. Number 27. Marzipan fruits. Almond paste candies, shaped and painted to look like miniature apples, pears, oranges, and strawberries. In 1955, marzipan cost about $1.50 per batch. That's roughly $17 today. Almond paste was the expensive ingredient at $1.20 per can. You needed 1 can. Knead almond paste with powdered sugar until smooth and pliable, like modeling clay. Add food coloring to create different colors for different fruits. Shape into tiny, realistic fruits. Use cloves for apple stems and leaves cut from angelica for decoration. Paint details with food coloring mixed with vodka or other clear alcohol. The alcohol evaporated quickly, leaving pure color without wetness that would dissolve the candy. The candies were sweet, intensely almond-flavored, and incredibly realistic looking when done properly. Some women had real artistic talent and made fruits that looked good enough to fool you from a distance. These disappeared when they became associated with expensive European candy shops and seemed too fancy for American kitchens. You can make them for about $20 today. Number 26. English toffee, pure butter and sugar toffee without nuts, topped with a layer of chocolate. Simple ingredients created pure buttery flavor. In 1950, English toffee cost about 80 cents per batch. That's roughly $9 today. Betty Crocker's recipe used equal parts butter and sugar, creating incredibly rich candy. Cook them together in a heavy saucepan, stirring constantly to prevent scorching until the mixture reached hard crack stage at 300 degrees. The constant stirring was essential. Any hesitation and the bottom would scorch, ruining the entire batch with a burnt taste. Pour the hot toffee immediately onto a buttered baking sheet. Spread thin with a buttered spatula. While still warm, but no longer liquid, spread melted chocolate over the top. Some people used milk chocolate, others preferred dark. The chocolate would melt slightly from the residual heat of the toffee, creating a perfect bond. The toffee was buttery, crunchy, incredibly rich. Your grandmother wrapped pieces in wax paper and gave them as gifts to neighbors and friends. These disappeared when Heath bars became widely available. You can make it for about $10 today. Number 25. Peppermint bark layers of dark chocolate and white chocolate, topped with crushed candy canes. In 1950, this cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. Melt dark chocolate and spread it in a thin, even layer on a parchment-lined baking sheet. Let it set completely at room temperature, or in the refrigerator. Melt white chocolate and spread it carefully over the dark chocolate layer. The two chocolates shouldn't mix. Immediately sprinkle crushed candy canes over the white chocolate before it set. Press them in gently. Let the entire thing set completely. Break into irregular pieces. The result was crunchy, minty, visually striking candy with red and white candy cane pieces against white and dark chocolate. Peppermint bark disappeared in the 1970s when layered candies seemed old-fashioned, but came back strong in the 2000s. Williams-Sonoma popularized it again, selling it for $20 per pound. You can make it for about $12 today. Rehook, 6 candies down, 24 to go. Every single one was a Christmas tradition. Every single one cost under $3 in 1955. Every single one disappeared when convenience replaced craftsmanship. But here's where it gets interesting. The next candies are even more obscure. These appeared in handwritten recipe cards passed between neighbors. Recipes that never made it into printed cookbooks. Number 24. Buttermints. Soft cream mints, made from powdered sugar and butter, shaped into small patties. In 1955, buttermints cost about 30 cents per batch. That's roughly $3.30 today. Mix powdered sugar with softened butter and peppermint extract until the mixture was smooth and pliable like dough. Add a tiny bit of cream if the mixture was too stiff to work with. The dough should be firm enough to hold its shape, but soft enough to press with a fork. Roll the mixture into small balls about the size of large marbles. Press each ball flat with a fork, creating a crosshatch pattern that was the signature of homemade buttermints. Let them dry overnight at room temperature. The mints would firm up as they dried, but remain softer than hard peppermint candies. Each piece was smooth, creamy, and melted on your tongue with cool peppermint flavor that built gradually instead of hitting you all at once. The butter gave them richness that pure sugar mints lacked. Your mother made these for every baby shower and bridal shower because they looked elegant and tasted expensive, but cost almost nothing. These disappeared when Andes mints became the standard after-dinner mint. You can make them for about $5 today. Number 23. Caramels Soft. Chewy candies made by cooking sugar, cream, butter, and corn syrup to firm ball stage. In 1950, caramels cost about 70 cents per batch. That's roughly $8 today. Heavy cream was the expensive ingredient at 35 cents per pint. Cook sugar, cream, butter, and corn syrup in a heavy saucepan, stirring constantly to prevent scorching. The mixture would darken gradually as it cooked, turning from pale tan to deep brown. The color developed naturally from caramelization, not from any added ingredient. When it reached firm ball stage at 245 degrees, remove from heat immediately. Pour into a buttered pan and let it cool completely, which took several hours. Cut into squares with a heavy knife. Wrap each piece individually in wax paper, twisting the ends like professionally wrapped caramels. The wrapping wasn't just decorative. It prevented the caramels from sticking together and kept them fresh. The result was soft, buttery candy that pulled slightly when you chewed, releasing rich caramel flavor. These disappeared when people stopped making chewy candies at home. You can make them for about $9 today. Number 22. Fondant cooked sugar syrup that was worked until it turned white, smooth, and creamy. This was the base for dozens of other candies. In 1955, fondant cost about 50 cents per batch. That's roughly $5.50 today. Boil sugar, corn syrup, and water to soft ball stage at 236 degrees. Pour the hot syrup onto a marble slab if you had one, or a cold platter if you didn't. Let it cool to lukewarm. This was crucial. If you tried to work it while too hot, it would stay syrup. Work the cooled syrup with a spatula, scraping, folding, and spreading, for 15 to 20 minutes of constant motion. The syrup would gradually turn white and creamy as millions of tiny sugar crystals formed. When it was completely white and smooth, knead it like dough until it was uniform. Store in an airtight container. The fondant would keep for weeks. You'd pinch off pieces, add flavoring and food coloring, shape them into candies, or use them as centers for dipped chocolates. This was the foundation of candy making, the base recipe every serious candy maker needed to master. Fondant disappeared when it became easier to buy. Pre-made fondant. You can make it for about $6 today. Number 21. Nougat whipped egg. Whites mixed with cooked sugar syrup, then studded with toasted nuts and dried fruit. In 1955, nougat cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. Boil sugar and corn syrup to hard ball stage at 260 degrees. Beat egg whites until they formed stiff peaks. Pour the hot syrup slowly into the egg whites while beating constantly. The mixture would become thick, glossy, and chewy. Fold in toasted almonds and chopped dried cherries or apricots. Pour into a pan lined with edible rice paper. Let it set for several hours. Cut into bars or squares. The result was chewy, sweet candy studded with nuts and fruit. The rice paper stuck to the nougat and was eaten along with the candy, providing structure and preventing sticking. This was the same nougat found inside candy bars like Three Musketeers and Milky Way. But homemade nougat tasted fresher and had better texture. Nougat disappeared from home candy making because it was difficult and time-consuming. You can make it for about $12 today. Number 20. Almond toffee butter and sugar toffee with chopped almonds throughout, then topped with chocolate and more almonds. In 1950, this cost about 80 cents per batch. That's roughly $9 today. Cook butter and sugar together to hard crack stage at 300 degrees, stirring constantly. Just before it reached temperature, stir in chopped almonds so they toasted slightly in the hot sugar. Pour onto a buttered baking sheet and spread thin. While the toffee was still warm, spread melted chocolate over the top. Sprinkle with more chopped almonds. The almonds pressed into the chocolate, creating a crunchy topping. Let it cool completely and break into pieces. The almonds throughout the toffee added crunch and nutty flavor to every bite. Not just the top. The combination of buttery toffee, bitter chocolate, and slightly sweet almonds created complexity. Your grandmother made this for special occasions because almonds were expensive. Almond toffee disappeared when English toffee became a specialty shop item that seemed too difficult for home cooks. You can make it for about $10 today. Number 19. Chocolate truffles. Rich ganache centers rolled in cocoa powder, looking like the expensive French mushrooms they were named after. In 1955, truffles cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. Heat heavy cream until it just started to simmer, with small bubbles forming around the edges. Pour the hot cream over chopped chocolate in a bowl. Let it sit for 1 minute without stirring, allowing the heat to melt the chocolate gently. Stir gently until the chocolate melted completely and blended smoothly with the cream, creating glossy ganache. Chill until firm enough to scoop, about 2 hours. Use a melon baller or small cookie scoop to form balls. Roll each ball quickly between your palms to make it round, then immediately roll in cocoa powder before your hands warmed the chocolate too much. The cocoa coating prevented them from sticking together and added bitter chocolate flavor. The result was rich, creamy chocolate that melted on your tongue. Truffles disappeared from home candy making because they seemed too fancy and French for American kitchens. You can make them for about $15 today. Number 18. Peppermint Divinity. Divinity, flavored with peppermint extract instead of vanilla, creating candy that tasted like edible clouds of candy cane. In 1955, this cost about 40 cents per batch. That's roughly $4.50 today. Make standard Divinity by cooking sugar and corn syrup to hard ball stage, then beating the hot syrup into stiff egg whites. After beating until the mixture held peaks and turned matte, add peppermint extract instead of vanilla. Some people added a drop of red food coloring to make it pale pink, which looked festive and Christmas appropriate. The result was fluffy white or pink candy that tasted like candy canes, but with a softer, melt-in-your-mouth texture. Peppermint Divinity was the most Christmas-appropriate version of Divinity, perfect for holiday parties and cookie exchanges. The peppermint flavor was refreshing and cut through the sweetness that made some people find regular Divinity too cloying. You can make it for about $6 today if the weather cooperates with low humidity. Number 17. Orange Slice Fudge. White fudge studded with chopped orange slice candies that stayed chewy inside the creamy fudge. In 1955, this cost about 70 cents per batch. That's roughly $8 today. Make white fudge using the same technique as chocolate fudge, but without cocoa or chocolate. Cook sugar, milk, and corn syrup to soft ball stage. Cool and beat until thick. Just before pouring into the pan, fold in chopped orange slice candies. The candy pieces retained their chewy texture and bright orange flavor, creating pockets of surprise in every piece of fudge. This was festive, colorful, and popular with children who loved finding the candy pieces. The combination of creamy white fudge and chewy orange candies created interesting texture contrast. This disappeared when candy-studded fudge seemed unsophisticated and childish compared to pure chocolate fudge. You can make it for about $10 today. Number 16. Vinegar candy. Old-fashioned, pulled taffy made with vinegar, which gave it a slight tang that balanced the sweetness. In 1950, vinegar candy cost about 25 cents per batch. That's roughly $3 today. Boil sugar, vinegar, water, and butter together until it reached hard ball stage at 260 degrees. Pour onto a buttered platter and let it cool until you could touch it comfortably. Butter your hands generously. Pull the taffy by stretching it out and folding it back on itself over and over for 10 to 15 minutes. The taffy would gradually change from amber to pale gold as you incorporated air. The vinegar flavor would mellow as you pulled, leaving just a hint of tang. When the taffy was light-colored and satiny, pull it into a long rope and cut into pieces with buttered scissors. The candy was chewy with bright, clean sweetness and that subtle vinegar tang. You'd rush home from school to help pull taffy because it was more fun than work. These disappeared when pulling candy became obsolete. You can make it for about $4 today. Number 15, sugared walnuts. Walnut halves coated in crispy caramelized sugar that crackled when you bit down. In 1950, sugared walnuts cost about 70 cents per batch. That's roughly $8 today. Combine sugar, water, cinnamon, and salt in a heavy skillet. Cook without stirring until the sugar dissolved completely. Add walnut halves and stir constantly. Here's where it got interesting. The sugar would crystallize first, coating the walnuts with a white, grainy coating. Keep stirring. The crystallized sugar would melt again and turn golden brown, creating a glassy coating. The transformation happened quickly, within 2 to 3 minutes. Spread on a buttered sheet immediately to prevent them from clumping together. The result was crunchy outside and tender inside, sweet and slightly spicy from the cinnamon. Each walnut was completely coated in crackly, caramelized sugar that shattered when you bit it. Your grandmother made these for bridge club and special occasions. These vanished when candied pecans became the standard. You can make them for about $10 today. Number 14, date nut roll. A log of dates, marshmallows, and walnuts rolled in shredded coconut, then sliced into rounds that showed the nuts and dates in a spiral pattern. In 1955, date nut roll cost about 60 cents per batch. That's roughly $7 today. A pound of dates cost 35 cents. Marshmallows were 25 cents per bag. Walnuts were 80 cents per pound, but you only needed a cup. Coconut was 30 cents per package. Cook chopped dates with a small amount of water in a saucepan, stirring constantly until they softened and formed a thick paste. This took about 10 minutes of constant stirring. Remove from heat. Stir in marshmallows, which would melt from the residual heat of the hot dates. Add chopped walnuts, and mix until everything was evenly distributed. Turn the mixture onto wax paper and shape it into a log about 2 inches in diameter. Roll the log in shredded coconut, coating it completely. Wrap in wax paper and chill overnight. The next day, slice into rounds about ½ an inch thick. Each round showed dates and nuts suspended like a mosaic, surrounded by coconut. Your mother made these because they looked fancy and elegant, but required no candy thermometer or precise temperatures. These disappeared when dates became old-fashioned. You can make them for about $8 today. Re-hook. 15 candies down, 15 to go. We're entering truly obscure territory now. The candies that appeared in Betty Crocker's holiday cookbook for only a few years before vanishing completely. These are the experiments, the regional specialties, the candies that even your grandmother might not remember, but every single one deserves to be rediscovered. Number 13. Maple creams, soft fondant candies flavored with real maple syrup, shaped into small rectangles, sometimes topped with walnut halves. In 1955, these cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. Real maple syrup was expensive even then. A pint cost 80 cents, and you needed half a cup. Sugar was 10 cents per pound. You needed 2 cups. Corn syrup was 25 cents per bottle. You used 2 tablespoons. Walnuts for topping were optional, but added 30 cents. Betty Crocker's recipe used pure maple syrup, not flavoring. The difference was night and day. Maple flavoring tasted artificial, chemical. Real maple syrup tasted like early spring in Vermont, like sap running in the trees. Boil maple syrup to soft ball stage at 236 degrees. The maple syrup was thick and amber. As it heated, it smelled incredible, filling your entire house with that distinctive maple aroma that drifted out through windows and announced to the neighborhood that someone was making maple candy. Pour onto a cold surface, marble if you had it. Let it cool until you could touch it comfortably, about 10 minutes. Work it with a spatula until it turned creamy and opaque. This was the magical part. The amber syrup would gradually lighten, turn cloudy, then white, then creamy. The texture changed from liquid to thick paste. Your arm would ache from constant motion. This took 10 to 15 minutes. Shape into small rectangles, about 1 inch long and ½ an inch wide. Use buttered hands. Press a walnut half on top of each rectangle if desired. The walnut added sophistication and slight bitter contrast. Let them sit at room temperature for several hours to firm up. The result was smooth, creamy candy that tasted intensely of maple. Each piece melted slowly, releasing wave after wave of pure maple flavor. Your grandmother probably only made these once a season because of the expense. Maple syrup was a luxury ingredient, but when she made them, people noticed. These weren't everyday candy. These disappeared when maple flavor became associated with cheap pancake syrup. You can make them for about $15 today with real maple syrup. Number 12. Turkish Delight gel-like candy, flavored with rose water, cut into cubes, dusted with powdered sugar. In 1955, Turkish Delight cost about 70 cents per batch. That's roughly $8 today. Rose water was the exotic ingredient at 50 cents per small bottle. Most grocery stores didn't carry it. You had to go to specialty shops or pharmacies. Gelatin cost 10 cents. Cornstarch was 15 cents. Sugar was 10 cents per pound. Combine sugar, water, and corn syrup in a heavy saucepan. Stir until the sugar dissolved. In a separate bowl, combine gelatin and cornstarch with cold water. This mixture prevented crystallization and created that unique gel-like texture. Pour the gelatin mixture into the sugar syrup. Stir constantly. Cook over medium heat until thick and translucent. This took about 20 minutes of constant stirring. The mixture would gradually change from cloudy to clear, from thin to thick. Remove from heat. Add rose water and food coloring. Traditional Turkish Delight was pale pink or golden yellow. The rose water gave it a floral flavor that was exotic and unusual to American palates in the 1950s. Most Americans had never tasted anything flavored with flowers. Pour into a buttered pan. Let it set overnight at room temperature. Mix equal parts powdered sugar and cornstarch. Turn the candy out. Cut into cubes. Toss each cube in the sugar mixture. The candy was chewy, gel-like, and tasted floral. People either loved it or hated it. It tasted like eating flowers, which was strange and wonderful or strange and terrible, depending on your perspective. Your grandmother probably made this after reading The Lion, The Witch, and the Wardrobe with your mother. Edmund's obsession with Turkish Delight made Americans curious. What could be so good it was worth betrayal? The whole neighborhood was fascinated by candy that came from books and foreign countries. These disappeared because rose water tasted too strange for most American palates. You can make it for $9 today. Number 11. Rum balls. Similar to bourbon balls, but made with dark rum instead of bourbon. Different flavor profile, same adult candy category. In 1950, rum balls cost about $1 per batch. That's roughly $11 today. Dark rum cost $4 per bottle, but you only needed a quarter cup. Vanilla wafers were 25 cents per box. Powdered sugar was 20 cents per pound. Cocoa powder was 20 cents per tin. Pecans were 90 cents per pound. Corn syrup was 25 cents per bottle. Crush vanilla wafers into fine crumbs. Mix with powdered sugar, cocoa powder, chopped pecans, corn syrup, and dark rum. The rum had to be dark, not light. Dark rum had more flavor, more molasses notes, more complexity that complemented the chocolate and nuts. Light rum was too clean, too neutral, too boring. Roll into 1-inch balls. Roll each ball in powdered sugar for coating. Store in an airtight container for at least 2 days before serving, preferably a week. The aging mellowed the rum flavor and allowed all the flavors to blend together. After a week, they were perfect. The vanilla wafers softened slightly. The rum flavor was present, but not overwhelming. The chocolate and nuts created richness. Your grandmother probably served these after dinner with coffee, not on the main candy plate. These were adult candy. These disappeared along with bourbon balls when boozy desserts fell out of favor in the 1980s. You can make them for about $12 today. Number 10, coconut ice. 2-layer candy with white coconut fondant on bottom and pink coconut fondant on top. It looked pretty and tasted purely of coconut. In 1950, coconut ice cost about 40 cents per batch. That's roughly $4.50 today. Shredded coconut was 30 cents per package. Sweetened condensed milk was 25 cents per can. Powdered sugar was 20 cents per pound. Food coloring was 10 cents per set, but you only used a drop, so one set lasted for years. Mix. shredded coconut with sweetened condensed milk, and powdered sugar in a bowl. The mixture should be very stiff, almost like cookie dough. Divide the mixture in half. Leave one half white. Add pink food coloring to the other half and knead until the color was uniform throughout. You wanted pale pink, not bright pink. Pale pink looked elegant. Bright pink looked cheap. Press the white layer into a buttered 8-inch square pan. Use your hands to press it firmly and evenly. The layer should be about half an inch thick. Press the pink layer on top of the white layer, creating two distinct layers. Press down firmly so they adhered. Refrigerate for at least 2 hours until firm. Turn it out onto a cutting board. Cut into small squares. Each piece showed 2 layers, white on bottom and pink on top. The candy was sweet, coconutty, with a grainy texture that was oddly satisfying. It wasn't smooth like fudge. It was denser and chewier. This was nostalgic British candy that became popular in America in the 1950s, when international recipes started appearing in magazines. Your grandmother probably made this because it was easy and required no cooking. The pink and white layers looked festive. Every baby shower featured coconut ice on doily-covered plates. These disappeared when layered candies became unfashionable. You can make it for $6 today. Number 9. Candied orange peel. Orange peel boiled 3 times to remove bitterness, then candied in sugar syrup, sometimes dipped in chocolate. In 1955, candied peel cost almost nothing because you used peels that would otherwise be thrown away. A bag of oranges cost 30 cents and provided peels for several batches. Sugar was 10 cents per pound. Chocolate for dipping was optional, but added 50 cents. The only real cost was time. Cut orange peel into strips about a 1/4 inch wide and 3 inches long. Remove most of the white pith, but leave some for structure. Place the strips in a saucepan and cover with cold water. Bring to a boil and cook for 10 minutes. Drain. This was the first boiling. Cover with fresh cold water. Bring to a boil again and cook for 10 minutes. Drain. This was the second boiling. Repeat a 3rd time. This was the 3rd boiling. This process removed the bitter compounds that made raw orange peel inedible. Make simple syrup by combining equal parts sugar and water. 2 cups sugar, 2 cups water. Bring to a boil. Add the drained peels. Simmer gently for an hour, maybe longer. The peels would gradually turn translucent as they absorbed the sugar syrup. The kitchen would smell like concentrated citrus, bright and clean. Remove with a slotted spoon. Let them drain on a wire rack overnight. The next day, roll each piece in granulated sugar. Some people dipped them partially in melted dark chocolate. The candy was chewy with intense orange flavor. Your mother made these because nothing went to waste. Orange peels became elegant candy. Every family practiced this economy. Chicken bones became stock. Stale bread became pudding. Fruit peels became candy. These disappeared when candied fruit became associated with fruitcake. But candied grapefruit peel is making a comeback at high-end restaurants, charging $12 per ounce. You can make it for $3 today. Number 8. Peanut butter fudge. This was smooth, creamy fudge made with peanut butter instead of chocolate. In 1955, this cost about 60 cents per batch, roughly $7 today. A jar of peanut butter cost 55 cents. Sugar was 10 cents per pound. Milk was 20 cents per quart. Combine sugar, milk, and corn syrup in a heavy saucepan. Stir until sugar dissolved. Attach a candy thermometer. Bring to a boil without stirring. Cook to soft ball stage, exactly 236 degrees. Remove from heat immediately. Stir in smooth peanut butter and butter while hot. The peanut butter melted instantly. Let cool to lukewarm, about 110 degrees. This took 15 minutes. Beat vigorously with a wooden spoon until the mixture lost its shine. Your arm would get tired, but you couldn't stop. When the fudge lost its shine completely, pour into a buttered pan. Let cool for 2 hours. The result was smooth fudge that tasted like peanut butter cups without chocolate. Your grandmother made this as often as chocolate fudge, because peanut butter lovers needed their own version. Every gathering had 2 kinds. The whole neighborhood understood you couldn't serve just chocolate. This disappeared when chocolate fudge dominated. You can make it for $8 today. Number 7. Divinity. This was fluffy white candy made from sugar syrup beaten into egg whites. In 1950, this cost about 35 cents, roughly $4 today. The ingredients were minimal, but the technique was exacting. Combine sugar and corn syrup with water. Stir until dissolved. Stop stirring. Attach a thermometer. Cook to hard ball stage, 260 degrees. While the syrup cooked, beat egg whites until stiff. When syrup reached 260, remove from heat. Pour hot syrup slowly into egg whites while beating. Pour too fast, and you deflate the whites. When all syrup was incorporated, beat until thick and matte. Add vanilla. Drop by spoonfuls onto wax paper. The result was candy that melted on your tongue like sweetened clouds. But here's what made Divinity special. Your grandmother only made it on dry days. High humidity prevented it from setting. Every family watched the weather. You needed humidity below 50%. The whole neighborhood knew Divinity weather. Clear, dry, cool days. Your grandmother would call her sisters. It's Divinity weather today. Multiple kitchens would produce batches simultaneously. This was community candy, weather-dependent candy. These disappeared because they required perfect conditions. You can make it for $5 today if humidity is low. Number 6. Seafoam. This was like Divinity, but made with brown sugar, which gave it golden color and butterscotch flavor. In 1950, this cost about 40 cents, roughly $4.50 today. The technique was identical to Divinity. Cook brown sugar and corn syrup to 260 degrees. Beat. Egg whites until stiff. Pour hot syrup slowly into whites. Beat until thick. Drop by spoonfuls. The brown sugar created golden color and tasted like butterscotch clouds instead of plain sweetness. Your grandmother alternated between white Divinity and golden Seafoam. White for spring, Seafoam for fall. Both required the same weather conditions. Dry air, low humidity. Seafoam had an advantage. The brown sugar masked small imperfections. If your technique wasn't perfect, the flavor covered the flaws. White Divinity showed every mistake, but Seafoam was forgiving. The whole neighborhood knew Seafoam was slightly easier. Women who struggled with Divinity could make perfect Seafoam. Once you mastered Seafoam, you graduated to Divinity. You can make it for $6 today if weather cooperates. Number 5. Pralines. These were flat round candies from brown sugar, cream, butter, and pecans. Each praline was both creamy and crunchy, tasting like liquid caramel. In 1955, these cost about 80 cents, roughly $9 today. Heavy cream was expensive at 35 cents per pint. Pecans were 90 cents per pound. Betty Crocker's recipe simplified the traditional Creole version that New Orleans candy makers guarded like secrets. The originals had been passed down through generations of Louisiana families using techniques that couldn't be written down. Combine brown sugar, cream, and butter. The proportions had to be exact. Too much cream and pralines would never set. Too little, and they'd be hard as rocks. Stir until dissolved and bubbling. Add pecans. Cook to 236 degrees, stirring occasionally. The smell would be intoxicating. The whole house would smell like a New Orleans candy shop. Watch the temperature carefully. Pralines were temperamental. At 234, too soft. At 238, too hard. At exactly 236, perfect. Remove from heat. Let cool for 2 minutes. Then beat vigorously. The mixture would thicken and turn from glossy to matte. Within 2 to 3 minutes, your shoulder would burn. When just barely pourable but thick as honey, work fast. Drop by large spoonfuls onto wax paper. The candy would spread into flat discs. If you waited, it would harden in the pan. Let cool completely. Each praline was creamy inside and slightly crystalline outside. Your grandmother probably learned this from a friend with New Orleans connections. Pralines represented exotic Southern culture. Making them successfully meant you had skills that set you apart. The whole neighborhood knew they were difficult. Women talked about their pralines like their children. Some were perfect, some were disasters. You can make them for $10 today. Number 4. Penuche. This was brown sugar fudge with walnuts, the candy that started the American fudge obsession. In 1955, this cost about 60 cents, roughly $7 today. The word penuche comes from Spanish for raw sugar. It crossed from Mexico into the Southwest in the late 1800s. By the 1950s, it was everywhere. This was the candy every serious cook had to master. Combine brown sugar, butter, and milk in the heaviest saucepan you owned. The key was even heat distribution. Stir constantly until dissolved. The kitchen would smell like heaven. Attach a thermometer. Bring to a boil without stirring. This was crucial. Cook to exactly 236 degrees, not 235, not 237. This precision wasn't fussy. This was chemistry. Remove from heat. Add butter, but don't stir. Let it sit on top. This provided insurance against graininess. Let cool to lukewarm, about 110 degrees. Touch the pan. It should feel like bath water. This cooling period created smooth fudge instead of grainy. Beat vigorously. The fudge would transform from glossy to matte. You'd feel resistance increase. Your arm would ache. Your shoulder would burn. When the fudge lost its shine completely, stir in walnuts. Pour immediately. You had 30 seconds. Let cool for 2 hours. The result was smooth fudge that tasted like concentrated butterscotch, like Christmas itself. Every Christmas, people asked for your grandmother's penuche. Her penuche was legendary. People tried to recreate it and failed. She'd give the recipe, but their results never matched. Because penuche wasn't about following directions. It was about understanding sugar. Your grandmother understood that cooking is a conversation between you and the ingredients. You can make it for $8 today. Number 3. Bourbon balls. These were no-bake candies, made from vanilla wafers, powdered sugar, cocoa, corn syrup, pecans, and real bourbon. Each piece had a boozy kick. In 1950, these cost about $1, roughly $11 today. You weren't buying cheap bourbon. You used the same bourbon you'd serve to guests. Crush vanilla wafers, mix with powdered sugar, cocoa, pecans, corn syrup, and bourbon. Use real bourbon, not whiskey. Bourbon had sweetness, and vanilla notes whiskey lacked. Mix until it held together. Roll into 1-inch balls. Your hands would get sticky and dark. Roll each ball in powdered sugar or cocoa. Place in an airtight container. Here's the crucial part. Don't eat them yet. Let them age. Store for at least 2 days. Preferably a week. Ideally 2 weeks. This aging wasn't optional. This was essential. During aging, magic happened. The bourbon mellowed. When fresh, the flavor was harsh. After 2 days, the harshness softened. After a week, flavors blended completely. After 2 weeks, they were transcendent. The vanilla wafers also transformed, softening slightly. Fresh bourbon balls were dry and crumbly. Aged bourbon balls were smooth and cohesive. Your grandmother made these every November and stored them in a tin in the back of the pantry, bringing them out only for Christmas parties and adult gatherings. She'd label the tin clearly in her handwriting, "Bourbon balls for adults only." This wasn't being prim or uptight. This was being responsible. These contained real alcohol. Not enough to get anyone drunk, but enough that children shouldn't eat them. Enough that people needed to know what they were eating. She'd serve them after. Dinner with coffee, not on the main candy plate with Fudge and Divinity. The bourbon balls had their own moment, their own presentation. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. This was your grandmother understanding that not all candy was created equal, that some candy was for children and some was for adults, and that treating them differently showed respect for both. The whole neighborhood knew bourbon balls meant sophistication and celebration. They were party candy, special occasion candy, candy that signaled this was an adult gathering. Serving bourbon balls announced that you weren't treating your guests like children. You were treating them like the adults they were, capable of appreciating complexity, nuance, and the warming pleasure of good bourbon. These disappeared when boozy desserts fell out of favor in the 1980s. People worried about serving alcohol in any form. Liability concerns, changing attitudes about alcohol, generational shifts in drinking culture. What if a child ate one by mistake? What if someone was in recovery? What if someone drove after eating them? Better to just not make them, not serve them, not risk any problems. But something was lost. The understanding that adults could handle complexity, that warning labels and clear communication were sufficient. That part of being an adult was making informed choices about what you put in your body. That sophistication meant appreciating things that weren't for everyone, things that required maturity to enjoy properly. You can make them for about $12 today. Number 2, chocolate fudge. This was smooth, creamy chocolate candy made by cooking sugar, milk, chocolate, and butter to soft ball stage, then beating until it thickened. Every candy maker knew this by heart. In 1955, this cost about 60 cents, roughly $7 today. But here's what the recipe couldn't tell you. It couldn't tell you about the first time your grandmother tried, and it turned into grainy disaster. It couldn't tell you about the second batch that never set. It couldn't tell you that she made fudge 17 times before she felt confident serving it to guests. Combine sugar, milk, chocolate, and corn syrup. The chocolate had to be unsweetened. The corn syrup prevented crystallization. Stir until dissolved. Attach a thermometer. Bring to a boil without stirring. This was critical. Cook to exactly 236 degrees. Remove from heat. Add butter, but don't stir. Let cool to lukewarm, about 110 degrees. This took 20 minutes. During cooling, sugar molecules slowed down. When hot, molecules move fast. When cool, they organize into crystals. If you agitated while too hot, you'd get large crystals. If you waited until lukewarm, crystals would be tiny, creating smooth texture. Beat vigorously with a wooden spoon, not metal. Wooden spoons were essential. The fudge would transform from glossy to matte. This took 5 to 10 minutes. Your arm would get tired, your shoulder would burn, but you couldn't stop. When the fudge lost its shine completely and became difficult to stir, when it was thick and heavy and trying to set up in the pan, add vanilla and pour immediately into a buttered 8-inch square pan. You had maybe 30 seconds before it would set solid in the saucepan. Use a spatula to spread it evenly, but speed mattered more than perfection. The fudge would continue to thicken as you spread it, fighting you, resisting the spatula. Let it cool completely at room temperature for at least 2 hours. Don't refrigerate it. Refrigeration would make it too hard and alter the texture from creamy to crumbly. Cut into squares with a sharp, heavy knife. If the knife stuck, wipe it clean between cuts. Your grandmother's fudge was legendary in the neighborhood. People talked about it year-round. They'd ask for it specifically at Christmas. They'd request it for bake sales and church bazaars. Other women tried to make fudge, and theirs never turned out quite right. Too soft or too hard, too grainy or too greasy. They'd ask your grandmother for her secret, and she'd share the recipe freely, walking them through every step, because that's what women did. But somehow, their fudge still wasn't as good, because the recipe wasn't enough. You needed practice. You needed to make it enough times that you could feel when the temperature was right, even before checking the thermometer. You needed to know what properly beaten fudge looked like. That knowledge couldn't be written down. It couldn't be taught from a recipe card. It came from experience, from paying attention, from making hundreds of batches over decades. Your grandmother understood something we've forgotten, that cooking is a conversation between you and the ingredients, that thermometers and timers are guides, not masters. You can make it for about $8 today. Number 1, peanut brittle. This was a thin sheet of hardened sugar syrup studded with roasted peanuts, the candy that separated timid cooks from brave ones. In 1950, this cost about 50 cents, roughly $5.50 today. But it required nerve because you were working with sugar syrup heated to 300 degrees, hot enough to cause serious burns. Every woman who made peanut brittle had heard stories about someone's cousin's friend who ended up in the hospital. But they made it anyway because homemade peanut brittle was worth the risk. Combine sugar, corn syrup, and water. Stir until dissolved. Attach a thermometer. Cook to 300 degrees. This took 20 to 30 minutes. The mixture would turn golden at 280, then deepen to amber at 290. At 300, it would be beautiful dark amber, the color of good whiskey. Remove from heat. Stir in peanuts and butter. Work quickly. The peanuts would sizzle and pop. Add baking soda and stir vigorously. The mixture would foam dramatically, doubling in volume, hissing like a science experiment. This created tiny air bubbles that made it easier to bite. Without baking soda, the brittle would be so hard you'd risk breaking a tooth. Pour immediately onto a buttered baking sheet. Work fast, because it would start to set within seconds. Spread it as thin as possible. The thinner, the better. Thick brittle was hard to bite. Thin brittle snapped cleanly. Some women could spread it so thin you could almost see through it. That was the goal. Let cool completely. This took an hour. Break into irregular pieces. The irregular pieces were part of the charm. The result was thin, crispy candy that was equal parts brittle sugar and roasted peanuts. Each piece had the perfect ratio of nuts to candy. The sugar was hard and crunchy, but not jaw-breakingly so. The peanuts added saltiness that balanced the sweetness. The baking soda created tiny air bubbles that made it light and easy to bite. The butter added richness that prevented it from being just sugar and nuts. Your grandmother probably made peanut brittle every Christmas, spreading it on her largest baking sheet, filling the kitchen with the smell of caramelizing sugar and roasting peanuts. The whole neighborhood would smell it and know someone was making peanut brittle. Children would appear at the door, asking if there were any broken pieces they could have. Your grandmother always saved the irregular edge pieces for neighborhood children, because those pieces weren't pretty enough to serve to guests, but tasted exactly the same. Peanut brittle disappeared when it became something you bought in tins at Christmas, mass-produced brittle made in factories and sold at grocery stores. The commercial version was fine, serviceable, but it wasn't the same. It was thicker and had fewer peanuts. It tasted mostly of sugar with peanuts as an afterthought. Homemade brittle was thin and had lots of peanuts. It tasted like peanuts with sugar binding them together. The difference was subtle but important. The difference was the love and care and willingness to risk burns for the sake of making something beautiful. You can make it for about $7 today. 30 Christmas candies from Betty Crocker's 1950s holiday cookbook. Everyone was a tradition. Everyone cost under $3. Everyone disappeared when we traded homemade for store-bought. These weren't just candies. They were connections to a slower way of life where an afternoon in the kitchen wasn't wasted time, but invested time. Which one are you making first? Share your answer in the comments below.